Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie Claire Gould, your host. And with me today is a new person to the podcast. Her name is Maury, and she likes to talk about Star Wars from a fairy tale perspective. So welcome, Maury, to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This will be fun. We're going to specifically launch into a specific story that has just come out relatively recently, Tales of the Underworld, but we're going to only talk about Ventress's arc. And so with that, what did you think of Ventress's story in Tales of the Underworld?
I loved it. I'm so happy we got to see her come back. I did think, what's funny about the Bad Batch when she showed up in that was like, if you never knew she died in the books, then nothing would be affected. But if you watch this, then it would probably be confusing. But I think, they assume we have read the books, which I did. And I love the book. And so I totally love this one. And my first thought is like, it jumps right into the fairy tale. It's like very specifically channeling a very specific myth. An Undine lore, which is like the mermaid lore, the water nymph lore. But I totally love that. And yeah, I think that's the best way to start is just where she looks dead to us under the water with all the witches. And so Mother Talzin gives Asajj an option, like you can live with us, in the spirit world of the witches and remain dead, or she can get life again. But there's always that price, and her price is she's going to lose her heart's desire, which I do think is most likely Quinlan Vos in this case.
Yeah, I think so. So, like, to set expectations, this starting scene is after an entire full novel of time that happens during the Clone Wars. And for those who have not read the novel, you can go and read the Wikipedia page. It'll probably do a better job of explaining it. But essentially, Quinlan is sent to go undercover and try and join up with Ventress because Obi-Wan is suspicious of Ventress and their motivations, and their goal is to infiltrate Dooku. They do a little bit of too good of a job because Quinlan turns to the dark side, and with him, so does Ventress. He kind of goes along for the way. It's a very steamy book. It ends up playing out that some very bad stuff happens. Actually, probably some of the harshest sort of separatist, dark sidey choices as far as the war goes happen. And what turns Quinlan back from the dark side is Ventress's sacrifice on Dathomir itself. And it turns it around for him. He comes back to the light. And she's dead, and we're all mad.
And he wipes a tear and leaves.
Yeah, he drops her into the pool. Yeah, she always used to talk about this place. Cool. And there is some important symbolism. It's in a deep, damp cave. It is a water rebirth location. Reminds us of womb symbolism, of course. That's all pretty standard in there. But it was nice to see Quinlan back on screen.
Yeah. So I do want to drop this little Undine bit here because it's kind of fun.
Okay.
So several hundred years ago, there was an alchemist, physician person, a guy called Paracelsus.
Okay.
He wrote a text, and it was about these four elemental beings he believed existed, and I guess a lot of people believed existed back then: fire, earth, air, water. The water is the Undines, and this book became a foundation text for the Undine, which is the water nymph and mermaid kind of lore. So he wrote Undines are all female. They live 300 years. But the big thing was, unlike the other little spirits, the Undine if she didn't have a soul, they're soulless for some reason, but if she could persuade a human man to love her, and he had to declare his love, and he had to speak the words and marry her and stay in love with her, then she could gain some of his soul and have his spirit and be more like a human, but she would lose that 300 years of life. And so you kind of see that reference down the road in like the fairy tale The Undine by De la Motte Folk, and I'm probably saying that wrong. And then of course Hans Christian Andersen would write The Little Mermaid, and he would reference the same bit of lore, which is mermaids wanting to get souls, but they have to lose a lot of their life in the process, and they have to get it by having a man loving them. So and Anderson's story, it's about a lot of different things. It was partly personal for him, but it's kind of a story about changing identities. The mermaid changes from being a mermaid to briefly human, a lot of sacrifice in there, and then finally she turns into the other element of being a sylph or spirit of the air. But what's interesting about this is that they're kind of tapping into that Undine lore a bit, but they're reversing it. So she gains her life back. So she's not losing lifespan, she's getting lifespan, but she's kind of like, metaphorically, we'd say, has lost her soul. Not like, in a traditional sense, but in like she's trying to find her path with all these identities, all these forms that she had, which is why people talk about Little Mermaid being about changing from different elemental ways of being from water to human to being air, which I know Disney's Little Mermaid doesn't do that part. But yeah, this is a story about someone who has been through all of it. She's a witch, she's Jedi, she's Sith, and she's at a place where she has to find her soul again, to find her identity and her past.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because she actually does sort of 4 rejections of her previous identities. So the first is all of the witches. So she wakes up and she's surrounded by the witches, and she's actually you hear her voice say "wake up" when you see Quinlan walking away, and then you hear Mother Talzin talking to her and giving her kind of this bargain, right? Which is
exactly.
you can go forward and live again, or you could stay with your sisters. And I don't know how much this is like her loss would have happened either way, I guess, like staying with her and the night witches would have happened either way. Like she wouldn't have been together with Quinlan.
Yeah. Either way, I guess if she lives, and she takes life, that's one thing I was kind of wondering about, like what happens if she finds Quinlan Voss?
Yeah.
She unalive. No.
I don't know. I don't know what your heart's desire actually means. Like in that moment, we assume it means Quinlan.
Yeah. Well, see, he's definitely long gone by the time she wakes up. So it wasn't one of those things where she's resurrected immediately and there he is. So it might have been already the loss where he's gone and she doesn't know where he is for some period.
And I wonder if there was years that she was there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the timeline because I know she's awake at least in the Bad Batch, which was like, I don't know, 2 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Yes. Yeah. Like when they, and then, well, so when she shows up, it is like that time period. And then, but I think that she's probably established at some point by that point. So maybe it actually hasn't been all that much time. I don't know.
Yeah. But I just thought like it's the Undine reversal. She's gained life, but now she's gotta find herself, and she's picking the most boring route she can.
Yeah, so like I love this job that she ends up taking, like because we like flash forward to her basically having this job, and to me I was like, oh, these are really good signs that she's actually changed archetypes with this death. Like she's fully in her crone era,
Yeah.
And actually, she's considered to be a hermit. And specifically because she is seeking peace and quiet and a good paycheck.
Yeah. Feeding the birds.
Feeding the birds, literally like old woman retired. She's called old a bunch as well. And, like she's faced with this shopkeeper woman who's like letting people like through the transportation, right? Like that's it. She's basically a visa person or a border control person.
Yeah.
I guess.
Do you have your ticket?
Do you have your ticket? You don't have your ID, kicked out. She's a bouncer, sort of. And the lady like notices like, hey, you really actually do have some skills. We could make way more money if you were interested in that. And she's like, no, I just want to live my life and feed my birds, and I want peace and quiet. And so certainly this is very much in line with the other hermits that we have seen within Star Wars, like Yoda just hanging out in Dagobah, Luke on Acto, just going fishing every day, just living his life. And when you have a crone archetype, so this like older mentor age, that is refusing to re-engage with the universe, it often takes a young hero to pull them out of their hermitage.
Yeah.
And get them like re-caring about the world like a balanced crone should.
Indeed. And we definitely get that.
Yeah, exactly. And literally after she's like, feeding the birds and I want peace and quiet, enter Kid. He shows up and asks for help after being very unconvincing that he has anything to do with figuring out his own life. So I would even classify him as a maiden archetype. He's not very capable without adult supervision.
I think it's funny. His name is Lyco, so like Filoni's going to name every kid, every adult a wolf name somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. His name is Lyco Strata. And one thing I kind of think is funny, I was looking up Stratos and Strata, because like that's a familiar term, like stratosphere. So strata means army, which I don't think is super relevant here, but
strata can also mean layers, right? Layers of.
It's also a character in Disney's Hercules, and it's not like from Greek mythology. It's a Titan character played by Corey Burton, who from Star Wars, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's based on the 4 elements again of air.
Yeah.
Air, fire, water. So I don't know if that's just some kind of complicated way of referencing air spirits, or just a coincidental name, or just a reference to Corey Burton's roles.
Corey Burton didn't play this character either, so it's like it's so weird to think that would be it. But yeah, Dave tends to like to use wolf names. There's a lot of them now in Star Wars.
Skull,
Hattie. Yeah. Yep. So, we have this called out by this kid who shows up. He's like, please protect me, basically, with big puppy dog eyes. And he informs her about this path, what did you like? I mean, we've been introduced to the concept of the path before in Star Wars. Like, it was a big part of Kenobi. It's been offhandedly mentioned a couple of times. And we knew that Quinlan was associated with the path in Kenobi because of some references to that. But what do you think about it being presented to her in this way?
I think I mean, I think she is fascinated just to hear that Quinlan Voss is associated with it. It's probably not a name she ever expected to hear again. I've kind of wondered if she's thought Quinlan Voss was maybe dead this entire time.
Right. Like
And she
maybe that was the sacrifice that she made, like by not being around when Order 66 happened, he died.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. She may have thought, oh, this is how I lost him.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she's thinking, oh, maybe I can go get him back. I think she's more interested in Quinlan Voss than she ever lets on throughout these episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely kind of spurs her into starting to take a path again of her own of
Yeah.
making and getting out of her ruts.
I would say that
her
because she is a swan maiden as well, that Quinlan broke a taboo. And so until he can repair that taboo, she can't return to his worlds.
No.
Right?
That is true. Yeah, and I don't know if this would tie in too neatly. Usually with the Undine lore, the the husband who has the Undine, he has to he can't just say, I marry you one time and then have done with it. If he ever insults her or calumniates her or ends up with somebody else while they are married, she go back she will turn back in the water.
Right.
And
that's the swan maiden like motif that appears in so many fairy tales. She leaves him because he broke that taboo. And so that even ties even further into her being an Undine.
Yeah. Kind of being associated with water. Because Dathomir is it's swamps, it's full of water and snake. And it's just kind
She's
of
a swamp mermaid.
She's a water snake maiden.
Yeah, water snake maiden. So we get the reference about what the path is. It's to save young people like me and old people like you. So he even calls her old. We know she's not that old, but like from a life experience perspective, although we haven't seen on screen all of the stuff that happened in Dark Disciple, where like basically, Quinlan and her are kind of married in the symbolic sense of the word. They go through several life stages together archetypically. And then he goes and leaves to become kind of like an evil general. And she tries to save him from that.
Yeah.
Yep. So they end up, she decides to help him, at least to get him away from here. And they are pursued by a predator. So this is also me thinking that he's also still a maiden phase, this kid, right?
Yeah, he's got inquisitors going after him. He's got the monsters coming after him.
The monsters coming after him. And essentially they end up fighting off the inquisitor, and this becomes a magic flight, an escape.
It does, but he also shows he's capable himself. So they both ended up stabbing the Inquisitor like at different times or attacking him at different times, using each other's lightsabers.
And it sort of shows like the acceptance of, to me, like back to that theme of identity that we talked about, that this is Ventress confronting, and if you have read Dooku Jedi Lost, you know that Ventress was formerly an apprentice, formerly a Padawan of a lost Jedi. And so this is her kind of confronting and accepting that Padawan-ness about her. The earlier part was of course, accepting her, Night Witch, Dathomirian Witch part of her. But like also saying like, I can't be that anymore.
Yeah.
But she's taking it with her.
Yeah, taking all the bits of her lives, her multiple. She's had like the most diverse life history, I think, of any Star Wars character. She's got the Jedi with her. She's got the Sith apprentice and the Night Sister. All these kind of identities in one, and I think she's rejected them for so long, but now she's getting back to taking those parts of her with her. Right now, I think
and
this
rejecting
whole
what the Inquisitor represents. Like, you don't fight like a Jedi. I know who you are. Like, calling her out as this former thing that she was. She gets called out about these former things that she has been, because she's trying to figure out, after this spiritual death and literal death that she experienced, right?
Mhm.
What am I anymore? We all
Yeah.
go through that phase when we have a spiritual death. We all try to
We
figure
do.
out what we are.
And the Inquisitor, he could be looked at as something that she could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, I
She
think
could have
might
easily been an Inquisitor if she had been part of the Clone Wars and alive during Order 66.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if she was so, dead under the water for kind of a little bit there. We don't know for how long exactly, but she might have missed some of the time frame to become an Inquisitor. I
Yeah.
think somebody would come knocking on her door for her to do that.
If she's
they knew
like,
who
if
to
the
him.
first job she found afterwards, the Empire's already established, then it's probably at least been a year.
Yeah. Yeah, she was doing the bounty hunter work only, I think, very just before Revenge of the Sith. And by the time we see her later, and then the first episode here, she no longer wants to do bounty hunting. That's behind her as
Mhm.
well. Which I guess that's another identity she had very briefly, was being a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that at the time, but yeah, it's kind of like 4 identities there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a lot of confrontation, and to sort of like put this into like a context. Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about how when you die, you actually have to take the different pieces of yourself and your former identities and actually like put them to rest. And so, like, she describes in her book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, she'll actually like do little like tombstones for who she thought she would be, and sort of like give a little like speech to those different versions of herself and lay them to rest, because you need to keep them with you, but you can't let those expectations rule you any longer.
That's a good way of putting it. I think that's really perfect for Asajj. She does have to call back her history as a Jedi, and then seeing, what her Sith possibility would be, but not totally discarding all of that. I mean, she learned, I think she learned from all of those things. And,
Yeah.
to know who she is, to go forward, to be a new person.
Exactly. And so they escape and they're together. Yay! And the second episode starts exactly where the first sort of. They land on a planet in their escape. And they sort of agree to work together, which is in trying to get this kid to the path, right? And trying to figure it out. And so Ventress has to call on another part of her identity, which is related to this underworld concept, which I think traditionally bounty hunters might fall into this, like, I'm going to go and do an underworld type job, or I'm going to go and steal stuff, right? So it's like this idea that she needs to sort of go back into this underbelly, re-enter with all of these types of underhanded people, and they all have kind of like different personalities, and reconnect with people and acquaintances that she used to know. In fact, it's confusing to this kid because he calls them like her friends, and she's like, those aren't my friends.
No. And he doesn't trust Asajj at this point, even though they've, saved each other. He doesn't trust her because he finally has learned, like, oh, she's somebody who has killed Jedi in the past.
Yeah, you killed some of my friends, he says. Which is,
but he's stick with her.
Yeah, exactly. This episode, ironically, is also called Friends, which is just like, it's really funny. So they make a deal, with this group of, I guess, mercenaries is kind of.
Yeah, Razzie.
Yeah, Razzie, who's the leader.
I think the droid is, like Heistinger, it's a C-21 droid.
Yeah.
And
David Accord plays that character. But they make a deal, and she's like, okay, I'll give you my information I have about the path if you do this sort of, not really snatch and grab because it's it's not that fast. But if you do this sort of job for me. And so this is again where Ventress is like confronting her past.
They're just doing jobs for other people.
Yeah.
Still an Imperial Shield relay units.
And they're huge. They're huge.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't expecting these gigantic spheres to go rolling all over the place. Well, they're inside the unit is inside of the giant sphere. I don't even know why these things are made this way, but it was visually very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder now who wanted those.
Yeah, I mean, like who wants these things other than more Underworld people at this point in time, or the rebellion?
Well, I think they said insurgents. I think I could be wrong. I think Lat said it was insurgents that wanted these. So,
yeah.
So could have been associated with like Sauce people, maybe, or I don't know if Ahsoka's people would be into that at this point in time or not.
Yeah, it's hard to tell like how long it took for any of the pieces of the rebellion to be functional and like cross-planetary, and like until of course Luthen is more organized in getting people equipment and money and people. And
yeah, I'm erring on the side of Saul for right now.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. He was kind of never-endingly functional because he just continued on, and he's on like, if in canon he's on like Geonosis at one point. He's on a whole bunch of planets, of course, in Andor. He is he's over in Kashyyyk at one point because of Jedi Fallen Order. Like, guy gets around.
He does. Unfortunately, he's not going to get these units, but
no, of course. And really, like, they're so big, it doesn't feel like it fits his style with how he does like guerrilla armaments and stuff. Anyways, this is a really interesting little adventure itself, but to me, like, there isn't a lot of depth to it other than the fact that Asajj realizes, and maybe you have other things to add to this, but Asajj realizes, like, with what is said about the kid, about Lyko. I keep on calling him the kid, but his name is like that. Like, Lots says you're worth twice as much as the equipment, and really, that's like a really good sort of symbolic metaphor here for Asajj has an attachment to this kid, and he represents the elixir for her. A second chance to do better and to save somebody else in a way that she couldn't herself save herself as a young Padawan.
Exactly. That absolutely. And I think she was trying to say to Lyko throughout the entire episode, like, oh yeah, these people, the bounty hunters, totally not my friends. And I think he was a little naive there, but it's Ventress who saves him and tells him to give up that device and to drop it so that they can all escape. And he thinks that she does die for a moment there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they both realize they need each other.
They need each other because they also have become kind of this unit together, and it's all tied in a bow with the line like, hey, could you share me that information so we know where to go next? And he agrees and says, I trust you. And so they're like now a duo or a dyad of sorts, a duo that are working on their own path together, which is what you want to see in a mentor-mentee relationship, is that they're both invested in the outcomes. And although it's within this idea of what they think is, I'm just trying to get this kid to safety, to the path, it's very Mandalorian season 1-2, where he's like, I'm going to go and bring this kid to the Jedi, not realizing that this kid is part of me too now, and it's better for this kid to be with me.
Yeah, she's going to take care of him. I think at this point she's still thinking, I'm just going to go take him to the path. I'll be rid of him, but I will have served my job and finished my quest.
Exactly. Yeah.
And she's been needing a quest to kind of highlight what she doesn't want anymore. And I think having this little adventure with these former bounty hunters, it's kind of fun seeing Lats again. She definitely looks a little bit older, and I guess she's not working with Boba Fett anymore.
No.
But they've all, I felt they've all been on individual paths in the time that we haven't seen them.
Yep.
And Lats has kind of continued on a path of like, oh, I don't trust anybody, and it's really just a solitary life where you don't have any connection.
Exactly. And this is Ventress's real. Yeah, and this is what like Ventress realizes she needs to have connection. She needs to have purpose, and she needs to have something to protect and look after.
Which is new for her. She did, I think, in Clone Wars have that episode where she saved that girl Pluma. But that was pretty much just kind of a one and over with quest, and that girl went on to live her own life. But Lyko is definitely going to be different.
Yep. So we move on to episode 3, and this is where we get this really interesting confrontation with a separatist remnant.
It is. This is where she gets to look back on being not just like someone who trained with the Sith, but being on a side of a war. Mm-hmm. I don't think she probably never thought of herself too much as a separatist, but now she has to confront that because other people, that's all they're going to think of her as is like, oh, you were on that side of the war. And then she's already, even at the start of this episode, kind of near the beginning, she's like, yeah, nobody won that war.
Yeah. And then she also like puts it in context. She's like, I was a commander in this, I guess, right? But I was also Dooku's assassin. Like she had already admitted to that. And it's like every episode, it's like she admits to a piece of herself and accepts it. Like just like how you need to grow beyond what your former self was. This is all apotheosis type stuff, collecting all of your pieces so that you can find the new version of yourself.
Exactly. And by doing this journey with Lyko, by trying, in her way, she's, ushering him to a new path. And they just call it, in the most literal Star Wars sense, the path. Mm-hmm. Ushering him to a new path. She's just going alongside it and finding her own new path. And, they, of course, we're always going to have to be on a desert planet.
Yeah.
With a lack of water, that's the very beginning of the episode, is they're teasing each other over lack of water. And I know some people see Asajj as being maternal. I saw an interview this morning with the actress, Nika Futterman, I think her name is. And she says in the interview that she didn't play it to be matronly, to be in a mother role, that's not where Asajj is right now. But I like what she said that, now that she's loved somebody, Quinlan, that's changed her and you can't really go back from that. Yeah. But at this moment, she's more in a caretaker role, but not exactly maternal. But you go to Tumblr and I see a lot of people are already, they're kind of treating her as a mother to Lyko. But when I saw them in this episode, I didn't see a mother-son kind of deal. It kind of was more friends, but like at most, as far as like a familial type relative, like at most, she's like either a much older sister or an aunt that's like the fun aunt that's maybe like 10 years older than you.
Gonna get you in trouble. And like the mentor itself role that she's starting to fulfill is kind of being able to rewrite her own history by helping this kid get where he needs to go. She's healing her inner child through Lyko.
She's got a mother herself.
Right. No, like she's never even had an opportunity to really figure out like who she is in a stable, balanced sense, right? She's still figuring that out. So how could she actually mother anybody? But she can be his mentor and friend. And, like they use the word like senpai in you know, Japanese media, you know, like it's kind of like that, like older classmate is also a mentor, right? And I like that idea.
Yeah, they're like psyching each other out with the water. She's kind of like punching him in the stomach. Like it's a totally different vibe than the expected. Like, I mean, he's not like a little boy. He's not like a tiny child. I think he's, I don't know, maybe like 14 or 15.
Yeah, I was actually
Teenager.
thinking about this in regards to the last episode because, of course, he's called out for having Jedi knowledge, and that means he's the equivalent of like how Ahsoka was in the Clone Wars. He was a commander.
Yeah, a kid given way too much responsibility.
Right? Child soldier situation. So like Ahsoka joins and becomes Anakin's Padawan, I think at 12. And so yeah. So he's young, but he's also seen war and probably at least a bit. He's probably seen some combat.
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't seem like he wasn't knighted yet, though he seems kind of older, I think, than Ahsoka was, and it could just be animation style. We don't know what his age is. But he's definitely an older kid, and he has more knowledge in this episode than we've known about him before. So far, he's been, like you said, like the maiden. He's been kind of, the damsel that needs to be protected, and he still does. But he also apparently has been learning diplomacy this entire time.
Yeah, and he's very good at it. So there is a challenge that's put forward to, hey, it's a quest. Go get us some water. and certainly some of it is like what Asajj thinks that she owes this imperial or separatist remnant and his granddaughter. But what they don't know is that this water is actually owned by somebody else. And this conflict is causing death and more destruction and war.
Yeah. And I think the grandfather, we don't know how he became a homesteader out in the desert, but I think he calls them raiders. But I mean, I think we could all figure out, like from the very beginning, yeah, no, it's their planet.
Yeah. And he just decided to settle there and do something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's raiding them. It's pretty obvious, but he apparently did not see himself as a raider.
No.
He sees himself as like, oh, I'm entitled to have all this and not really work with anybody.
Exactly.
And I was trying to think. I forgot, where did they get the water from?
I think it was like a spring or something, but yeah, it was out in the desert. They had to go and get it. They are confronted by the locals of this planet, and they end up in a sticky situation where we have Lyko have to use diplomacy to get them out of it.
Oh man, that girl was ready to shoot those raiders.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But she is kind of like a quiet voice of reason. She will be the voice of reason when she gets back. But yeah, Lyko knows all the languages and enough to know that who the water belongs to, and to persuade them both to go back to the homestead and talk. And
yeah, and he says sometimes you just need to listen. That's like the key, right? Like you need to have said, "Hey, we're here now. Can we have this water as well, or some of this water?" and resolve it. And yeah, and Asajj sort of is understanding how this separatist remnant got to this point, but is like, we have to work this out without blasters. And so she's again acknowledging her sort of, I would say, veteran status from this war, right? And that you have to move past it to do what she needs to do in the future, which is you need water to live. And she needs water to live. They need water to live. And that's what you have to do, is to sometimes come to talking, to compromise. And it is literally the lesson that Padme tried to teach everyone during the Clone Wars, which is this war is a result of a failure to listen.
Nobody in Star Wars talks to each other.
Exactly. And so, like, she herself has learned the lesson of the Clone Wars.
She has.
This is awesome.
She has learned what Padme has taught.
Exactly. How could we wish for more people to learn that?
She has to let the pieces of herself kind of talk to each other as well, because she's lived all these different aspects of life. She doesn't need to compartmentalize them as different things. She has to kind of listen to Lyko, but also listen to herself and these different aspects of the different times of her life. She doesn't have to look at the part of her that was with the Sith, the part of her that was with Jedi, and compartmentalize them. She can integrate those parts of her to create a whole.
And we end off with them deciding to continue on this path together, regardless of if they find the path together, they're sticking together.
Riding off into the sunset.
Exactly. So to me, this actually felt like the soft launch of a show.
I agree. And if it's not one, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah. Like, I want more Ventress in my life. This was great.
I think there's a lot she could do. She has a complex history, even if it's just going from town to town and saving the day.
Like, littlest hobo and kid.
But I think it's interesting, the boy Lyko, he assumed like maybe she wanted to go see Quinlan Voss again, which means she must have talked to him to some degree about Quinlan kind of off screen. So I don't know how far she would have, talked about her relationship with to this boy, but
he probably would have been shocked that Jedi engaged in a romantic relationship.
But ultimately, she decides not to go there, even though I'm sure Quinlan Voss would have welcomed her. And I don't know if that's because of Mother Towson's words at the beginning that I'm still in the back of my mind. I kind of wonder if something happens if she tries to reconnect with Quinlan Voss, or if she just wants to let him go and maybe let him do his own thing.
Yeah, I think it's more, to me, what I hope that this is saying is, Asajj, go on and heal yourself, do the self-care thing, and if it's meant to be, he'll come your way.
Yes.
Right?
That's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm hoping she doesn't turn into swamp water if she runs into him or something like that.
She turns into swamp foam. Very Little Mermaid.
It doesn't need to be literal, Though, I mean...
Well, it could also just be like how it's said in a way is like, no, you can't live for Quinlan anymore. You have to live for yourself. And if he happens to come along, that's great. To me, that's the healthy interpretation of what's happening. But who knows?
And then Lyko decides, like, you know what? I like being with Asajj. And I think he thinks Asajj probably needs him.
Yeah, I think they need each other, which is great. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts on this episode arc? And
other than it being a soft launch for a show that I hope will happen, but yeah, I think back to the idea of keeping a core of yourself while integrating identity and while changing identity. And I thought about, that kind of Little Mermaid aspect where she's done like the mermaid. She's been in the water like the Jedi or the witches, and then she's been a different kind of being, and then she's been a third kind of being. And you can look at these as being very separate, but in these stories, she's had to kind of learn to integrate all of that, but not be taken in by one any particular kind of life. Just reflect on all and then take that into herself, and kind of like she is like metaphorically trying to get her soul back, or find her own path with all that she's done before, and also without, because that's what the story is, that she was lost at the beginning of the episode. She gained life, but
what kind of life was it? Because it was after death, right? Which in life archetypes, that's the crone stage, and the journey of the crone is learning how to live again.
It is. Yeah. And, I think when I talk about To Little Mermaid, like the original story, it's it ends where she becomes an air spirit and she gets her lifespan back. She lives to be 300 years again, and she's just going to like make people happy and gain a soul. And I don't, think the story's going to go like that deep into it, but I think she is set up to where she could do a storyline where she does good for people. And in that process of doing good for others, that's how she finds her path. And Lycos is kind of her guide, her wolf named boy guide.
So he ends up being a psychopomp for her too, which it ties into what he represents to her, which is this elixir that she has accepted, the thing to live for. The secret is doing things for others, compassion and helping others, including Lyco.
Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate mission statement of Star Wars.
It really is.
Help yourself and to help your entire community and the galaxy.
And the community with the Separatist remnant is healed.
They're all going to live happily out ever after in the desert.
Exactly. And there's enough water to go around. I loved this story. I thought it was really, really solid. It was thoughtful. It had a lot of important things to say. And it showed us what Star Wars is all about, like you said, and this quest for wholeness that we see each character walk on, that is, in the end, seeking balance within themselves. And we get to watch that with Ventress. It's great.
Well, I definitely hope to see more of it in the future.
Yeah, I want more Ventress. Let's say more Ventress for us. Maury and I want more Ventress.
There is never not enough Ventress.
Exactly.
Bring it on.
Well, Maury, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate your insight into this tale, the Tales of the Underworld, Ventress's arc. Where can people find you if they're looking for you online or looking for your work? You can let people know where they can find all of your stuff.
I have a blog that I occasionally write in once in a blue moon. It's morimole.com. Just morimole.com. And I'm on Blue Sky, and it's just going to be the same name, Maury Mole.
Yeah. And your posts are great because they always bring me thoughts. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that was a good point. Good point, Maury. So thank you so much for joining. And I really, really appreciate being able to dig into Ventress's story more. Cheers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, happy to be on here.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our orchestral music is by Christy Carew for What the Force. You can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Christian R., Adrian, Sarah Joy, Scott, John, In Wild Space, Minky Moo, Derek C., How Rude, Christian Luca, Carly Ann, and Scott C. Support the show by wearing the Force with our merch. Like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. You can connect with us on Blue Sky at WT Force, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or on our website at whattheforce.ca, or our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.